Hey everyone, welcome back to Tales of Recovery. This is Gris Alves. I'm your host, and today's guest is my beautiful friend, badass Nikki Velch, Earth S Healing on Instagram. And Nikki and I met maybe a couple of years ago at at a farm, at an elder farm, in this amazing gathering for our friend Sarah's birthday. And out of everybody that was there journeying, I just really connected with you. Remember, we talked for hours. Just really cool. And following Nikki and her lifestyle, which is something that I would like to do, connecting to Earth, living out in nature. I asked Nikki to come on as a guest and tell us about how she's doing this and how you can, let us all know what it takes, how it heals your body, and how we can honor Earth better. Nikki is an Earth Intimacy Facilitator, also an Ayurveda educator, natural builder, and well, you can tell us a little bit more about that. But thank you. We've been tracking each other down for like 2 years. We finally are here recording this podcast. So welcome everyone, and welcome Nikki. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, like you said, it's been a journey to get to this moment and just trusting divine timing of
All
coming here.
right. Yeah. I'm in San Diego. I was going to go out to your where were you living? You were living in like an adobe cabin up in the mountains here in
Yeah.
Palomar Mountain. Florida.
In like Elsinore, yeah. So I lived at a retreat center that had multiple cob houses where I was doing a living work trade there on this beautiful property.
Cob houses.
Cob houses,
Cob
yeah. So that
houses.
is just using clay, sand, and straw for building techniques. And we can weave this in as we chat, but really just my life purpose or dharma right now is really navigating all aspects of my life that I can do in a non-toxic, most natural, harmonious way with nature,
Mm,
and really challenge myself with all ways that I live, and that includes the house that we live in. I
mhm.
um yeah, just looking at new ways to live.
Yeah. So for everyone who doesn't know, I mean, Nikki grows her own food. She creates these spaces that are in tune with nature. And I want to ask you, okay, how did this all get started? Like, where are you from? How did this happen? How did you get to this place?
Mm. Yeah, so I'm originally from Minnesota,
Mhm.
and I'm so blessed with two parents that really just, I just I feel bubbles in my whole being when I think about my childhood, because I had my parents just, let me and my sister outside and were like, go play, like don't come in until dinner. I'll bring your lunch out. And my sister and I used to go camp in the cornfield in the backyard, and my parents are landscapers and snow removal, that's what they've done for their life. So most of my life has been outside, like as kids for fun. My dad plows snow, and he used to just plow all the snow from the driveway and make a mound, and he'd be like, go ahead kids, play with that. And so I was just really raised in an environment that supported my exploration of imagination and using my hands, and um, also just knowing or trying learning what hard work is.
Right.
My parents are landscapers, so my whole life has been really hard, laborious work that's been the foundation of how I show up in this world, because it is hard work. Life is hard work.
Yes,
And
it
there's
is.
also significant lessons. So that's kind of just always been woven in my life, really.
That's great. I mean, it's so different than city kids where, you know, I mean, I wasn't out well, actually, I was a lot. My grandparents did have a farm, and so we were out like every weekend at the farm. But even now, it's just more here's your phone, here's a TV, here's everything structured, here's a soccer game. That's about the only grass you're going to see all week. And depending on where you live. But yeah, having that experience to just explore and have not these helicopter parents trying to monitor every move you make. Being out in the open is it's a rich experience. So I'm guessing maybe that's why you have the freedom to explore the life you're living now, or that's where it started from.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the big shift for me, which I think a lot of people have this, was like 7 or 8 years ago, or however long ago it was now. But I did my yoga teacher training, and that kick-started an awakening in me of just questioning what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think I took my own course of what it means to live in harmony with the earth when I moved out to San Diego 6 years ago, or whatever it is now. um and farming was my in. I was like, I want to learn how to farm all year. And anyone who's farmed, even if it's gardening or full-time farmer, like, the plants and the soil is my greatest teacher. Like, I will forever, devote my life to the plants and the soil, because that was the education that I felt like I never received in school
Right.
when I farmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't tell you where the food comes. I mean, maybe a little bit, but not really.
Hmm.
Not the way it would make, you know, the earth and our humanity a lot better. More
Hmm.
understanding, more comprehension about where our sustenance comes from and what we really need for ourselves, for our bodies, and for keeping this earth alive. So,
Hmm.
did you do farming? So, you came to San Diego and started working as a farmer, or how did you even get
Yeah, yeah, great question. So yeah, so I got the hit to move, and I remember it was like I got the download, like, it's time to make a big move. And I didn't know if it was going to be Northern California, Oregon, or San Diego, whatever it was. And I remember it was like a 2-week decision that my bags were packed, and my mom was like, I'm coming with you. Like, I'm going to come out. I'm like, Mom, I don't know if I'm going Northern California or Southern California. She's like, I don't care. I'm just coming, I'm coming with you. And I was like, all right. And I finally made the choice. And I think it was honestly like moments before we left that I was like, I'm going to go to San Diego and just start at the bottom. And if I don't, if something doesn't resonate, I'll just drive up and
drive
continue.
up? Mm-hmm.
And so my mom tagged along, which is just like one of my biggest supporters and teachers in my life.
Mm.
And
How old were you when you came down?
I was 60, like 22, maybe
Okay,
23, forgetting.
cool, cool.
But yeah, so I actually started working at this organic juice shop that was so to the T, with like so aligned with me. They source locally and just to the T, everything, glass bottles, like
Mm-hmm.
everything was so beautiful. And I managed the farmers markets for them for a year. And the farmers market slowly led into, I was biking around where I was living, and I saw this farm, and I was like, I need to be there, and I was just biking by. And so I remember calling them, and it long story short, I got the job at the farm. And so I slowly transitioned from the farmers market managing position and started farming by the grace of God, really. Cause I was
Yeah.
like, I don't, I grew up driving a Bobcat and a Gator and with my hands in the soil, but I've never farmed full time. I
Mm-hmm.
just really
Mm-hmm.
humbled myself in that. Yeah, the farming was there, and that ultimately led me to the Eco Village project that we originally had met, where I was living there out of the tent. So yeah, farmers market manager, farming, and then the Eco Village project.
Who started the eco? Can you tell us about the Eco Village project? Where it is? What does it do? Who started it? How it works?
Yeah, so my dear brother Joshua Elvard, who's based in San Diego, has really, in my eyes, just devoted his life, his passion is just to bring people together to explore different ways of living. And there's that could be a whole podcast, but he started this nonprofit called Local Earth, and you can find it, I think it's just localearth.org.
Mm-hmm.
um, and he put together this phase 1 project of an eco village. The greater vision for him was a 120-person eco village. Of course, these are all like numerology that's been researched, but phase 1 was 12 people test group.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was part of the phase 1 test group, which was a 2-year testing period of what it takes to, you know, land on a piece of property with no infrastructure and start a community. Like, what does that actually look like, an intentional community? And so I was the one person that came in 6 months after they started the phase. Um, but yeah, it was pretty much, we had 7 of us, I think, and 3 kids that all lived out of our own little structure. There was a teepee, there was a trailer, different kinds of trailer, a tiny house, and I was out of a camping tent. And yeah, we all did the thing for, I was there for a year and a half and explored what that meant.
Did they have a well for water? Were you guys growing your own food, or was it?
So we had a garden, but I wouldn't say that we were off grid by any means, because we were
Hmm.
still hooked up to the city water.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't say it was off grid. It was definitely at that phase of my life the most off grid I've lived.
Hmm.
Now that I truly live off grid, I'm like, oh, okay. But yeah, we were still hooked up to water and stuff, but we had solar panels. We were putting stuff in place as we were cultivating an experience together.
So in the eco village, does it mean you guys would share meals? I mean, I'm so curious because this is kind of what I'm dreaming about with my next 5 to 7 year plan is to have this big land where I can have like an eco village where everyone has their own space, but also there's like the middle shala where you can come and join everybody for meals or yoga or ceremony or just party, whatever. Um, so I'm curious to know, like, did you guys practice that, or everybody was on their own and just came home after work?
Mhm. Yeah, so, we went through many variations of, trying to incorporate and integrate ourselves as much as possible as a village, and also realizing that we're in the modern world. We're all working, we're traveling, so trying to do our best with that. Um, but yeah, we shared dinner every Tuesday. We did a heart share circle every week, where we just
Mm.
did a 2-minute share what's alive for us, if we had any tension with anyone, and every couple months we'd do a long heart share around the fire, and we would just be real and raw with each other of what's going on, the challenges and the celebrations and all the things. Yeah, and primarily it was, building a space for us to all, like a co-working little library space for us to hang. And we put up some geodesic domes on the property and started having some events to support some of our projects and Joshua's nonprofit. Um, but yeah, one thing I really love to share about Eco Village or going back to the land, living in community, is it's really a journey of the heart. Like, you really when you say yes to living on the land in the Eco Village with the people, like, you're saying yes to doing work with whoever you're living with, like deep work, that everyone has to be willing to show up and be witnessed in their work. And that's something that I didn't fully comprehend, upon being like, hell yeah, I'm going back to the land doing the thing. Um, during and afterwards, I was like, holy shit, I didn't know that I'd have to be witnessed in all my work and also witness others in all their work. And that was just, yeah, living in community is so profound. And especially out in the elements, there's just so much more that comes with that too.
Yeah, because right here in the city, we're so like you go home and you lock yourself in, and then you don't see anyone for 2 3 days. You're fine, and you just avoid it. And oh, whatever, I'll deal with that annoying person or this situation later. Time goes by, passive aggressive. No, so being in community where you really aren't going to go anywhere with that commitment, I can see why that would be work in the heart, but also like, I mean, if we're not doing that, we're just wasting time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a choice. Like, every day I have to remind myself that I'm choosing to evolve.
Yes.
If shit keeps happening in my life and I'm like, why is this happening? Why do I keep coming up against these barriers? Why do I keep feeling lost? Why am I why am I still asking myself what I'm doing with my life? And
Hmm.
I have to remind myself that I'm choosing to evolve.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to grow. And that growing is always changing. So it's humbling to remind myself that I've chosen this lifestyle, and I wish to continue to choose this lifestyle.
I mean, it's so courageous.
Mm.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. It's a beautiful example. And especially I mean, you got to wonder, like, even though, you might be out thinking, why am I doing this? Why is this situation so intense? It's intense anyway. Everybody over here in the city has anxiety and stress and getting wasted every day. So it doesn't matter. It's just what intensity are you going to choose? Something that's healing your nervous system, honoring earth, evolving what I believe to be where we all need to go. At least integrate, because otherwise, who knows what's going to happen 50, 100, 150 years to our mother. So,
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, I think I get this from my mom and dad for sure, of like that go-getter mentality of just, as soon as the opportunity came across my journey to be part of this eco village, I was all in. I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to build myself a tiny house. I was just like making all these plans for myself. And of course, probably 90% of that didn't work out for me. But it was that, there's this resiliency that gets built when we really go for it, when we really listen to our soul and our spirit of what we're being called to. It challenges us, and that's why it's there. That's why the call's there. And also just really builds character so deeply.
and I'm guessing, and I like to ask this question because for our listeners and for anybody, for me as well, I'm assuming during this time you're practicing meditation, you're practicing yoga, you're out there. For me, a meditation is really putting your hands in the ground and growing your food, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do these practices help you in building that resiliency?
Such a great question. Um, yeah, there were so many times where I was like using all the tools in my toolbox, and I think we've all, maybe not all of us, but, been to that point where it's just like, I'm using my breath, I'm using all these tools and knowledge, and it's still challenging. And that's, we still have to come up with new tools. We have to fix our tools, reinvent our tools, get new
Mm,
tools to do the projects that we're now working on. That we can't have one tool that works for life.
right.
Um, and yeah, I developed and deepened so much of my practices during that time. And also it just really faced faced myself with talking about doing meditation every day or whatever it is, but actually having to do that every day, like there was almost no choice in certain parts because I was just so broken wide open that I had no other choice but to cry and put my hands in the soil
Yeah.
and pray and breathe. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's just moments where we don't have a choice,
Yeah.
and yet we're still making a choice within not having a choice to be there and stay.
Please stay.
Please stay.
That's one of my mantras. I just tell myself, please stay. Don't
Yeah.
abandon your griefs. Just get back in.
Yeah.
Stay with the sorrow. Stay with whatever's happening.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you stay in the eco village for how long before
So
you?
I was at the Eco Village for a year and a half. And um, at the end of it, and I think many of us were feeling similar things, but I remember leaving the Eco Village, and there's so much that wraps up in that whole experience, but leaving there and I was like, whoa, that was a trip. My car is packed and I'm like, out, I was like, oh my God, like what was that? What was that choice? And so grateful. It's like one of my most profound experiences. And I also remember leaving and being like, I don't think I would do that one again in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and or just felt like very particular. If I did, I felt like I had a list of my for sures and my for sure nots,
Mm-hmm.
and um it's so funny leaving that experience and being like, you know what, maybe I do want a real house with four walls. And I was like re-questioning the things I've kind of like, I don't need this, I don't need the phone, I don't need service, all I need is the earth and outside. And I'm like, shit, maybe I do need a bathtub. um, and so it's so funny to like leave that property and be like, holy shit, that was raw and intense. And then find myself now, I just moved up from Southern California to Northern California, out in a tiny cabin, completely off grid on 140 acres.
Wow.
out there, and this was a call from the universe and spirit of, I didn't really, in my mind, I was like, I'm ready to get back in community. I was like, maybe I'll even live in this city and integrate what I know now into the city world. But something just pulled me right back to be out in the wilderness again. And so the evolution of that has been amazing to witness, really.
But so from the eco village, you went out to Montecito, or you were first at
Yeah.
the because before you got there, you were at those houses, right? The adobe houses we were talking about.
Yes. So yeah, thank you. So after I left the eco village, it was actually right when the quarantine started, and my plan, I had my car packed. I was like, I'm just gonna head up north, see what land feels good, and drop myself somewhere. Um, but it wasn't the right time, and so I went back to Minnesota for probably 5 or 6 months and stayed with my parents and hung out with my sister and my nieces and nephew. And then from there, came back to the West Coast. Southern California just always calls you back.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
so
from there,
sunny.
yeah, it's so sunny. So yeah, from there I stayed at this retreat center, and I was doing a lot of natural building work. And I think I was actually there for 5, maybe even 6 months too. The time flies. So yeah, from that place is when I moved up to where I am right now up in Northern California.
I followed you on that trip back to Minnesota. Those pictures were amazing.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, she's camping by herself, just off the grid. Like, we're always looking for campgrounds. I just want to do that. Like, I mean, I've done that before, but now you have kids, and it's a pain in the, not the kids, but like, I don't know, it's complicated. Or
Yeah.
maybe I just make it complicated. But watching you doing that and getting up there, and then you grew like all this food at your parents' house, right? Or at
Yeah,
least I followed some of
yeah.
your journey there.
I low key started a small farm. My
Okay.
parents are, my dad has all the toys. He has the bobcats, and my mom's just a badass. You two would really, really jive together for sure. But yeah, I remember one day I was like at the dining room table, and my dad and I were talking, and I was like, it's something along the lines of like, how long are you staying? Blah blah. They know that I'm like a mover and groover, so they're like, how long are you staying? And I was like, if I could grow some food here, then I think that I would stay a little bit longer. And it was less than 24 hours, I kid you not. I woke up and my dad was outside with the bobcat scraping up the
Oh,
grass, and
yes.
I remember him just like, how big do you want it? Dude, what is happening? And it was amazing because it was me, my mom, my sister, and my dad who just banged this, it was like 30 by 40-foot mini farm, and just grew a bunch of food. My sister and my mom made zucchini bread all summer, and my mom, my sister, and I canned, and it just it was a reminder of like the food just brings everyone together and creates the experience. I didn't have to do anything other than just put the seeds in the ground, and it cultivated a plethora of experiences, right? And
Yeah.
like, there was so much for me there of like going back to the land that I grew up on. And I think when I moved to California, it's like I want like plants everywhere. I want to be surrounded by people who are like-minded and with the earth and blah blah. And when I got back to my parents' property, it was like there was medicine everywhere. The pollen was coming from the pine trees. There was violet leaves in my mom's garden, and burdock root and dandelion root. I was like out in all the yard digging all those up and making tinctures. And I was like, how did I not see this before?
Mm.
And it just, I think we leave. It's like coming back to like the stay, like please stay.
Mhm.
And I've been a runner in my life when things get complicated and have not stayed, and I think Minnesota, part of that, I didn't stay in Minnesota, and that leaving, I should say the coming back, it widened my aperture of what I thought I didn't have, but was actually right in front of me the
Right.
whole time, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
But I guess, that's how life works, right? You leave, you have experiences, you come back. Oh, this was here all along. But now I have a deeper appreciation for it, or a
Hmm.
different perspective of it,
Yeah.
right? It's good to go and fly and land back again and be like, yeah,
Totally.
you're
Totally.
right. That's
Yeah,
so
definitely.
cool though.
Yeah, and also to be able to, what a big edge for me was to go to live with my parents, let alone that, after years of living by myself, but stay there and to, still be myself around my parents, which, we've always had a really close connection. And I don't necessarily go outside naked and bang the drum in the front yard like I do with my girlfriend. We go camping, like
Yeah, yeah.
there's certain things that I like for the sake of my mother and father, I don't do all the time around them. But, to be able to kind of test myself of how can I show up fully as I am and not conform to what I think my parents want to see or whatever it is, and which was so beautiful because really my dharma, I feel like, is wherever I am, whatever land I'm on, I tend it. I love it wherever I am, and it just doesn't really matter where I am. It's just whatever land offer it love. And what a blessing to come back to the land that I grew up on. And there was multiple moments. There was one in particular that I'm remembering of I did, I woke up and I cried for hours about the water, something it was triggered in me about just the cleanliness of the water and all this stuff. And it was a full day in ceremony that I spent of just something inside of me was guiding me, like, go fill up a bowl of water, go gather flowers. And it was just kind of like I was being directed all day. And I created this flower mandala around this tree. And I had this bowl of water and I cried and prayed to this tree all day. And it was a lot because I was like, inside of me, I'm like, ooh, are my parents gonna come up and be like, what is she doing? Or like, and I just tried to really let myself like be fully in it. And, I remember later that night, my dad was mowing the lawn and he came up to me and he was just like, what do you got going on by the tree? Like, he's like, what's the bowl of water and flowers? And, and there's just so much to unpack of the way I do things and why I do things that it almost doesn't matter to explain to people. It's just, um, I've tried to explain, and not that my dad wouldn't get me, like he totally understands me, but in that moment I realized it's not about me explaining why I do the things I do. It's
Mhm.
just people witnessing me do the things that I do.
Yeah.
And I have to trust that that's enough. Like it's been a journey of not trying to prove myself to anyone, but just be myself and passively witness how that affects people and how that impacts people.
Yeah. I mean, it's impacted me.
Hmm.
It's just beautiful. And I love that you don't have to give explanations, um, in particular to the parents. And I think most parents just love us anyway, but yeah, that need as a child to be like seen or understood or getting that approval, and you would like bypass that and just follow your own, stay with your heart and do your thing. It's, man, that's just, I think that's really where liberation begins. Honoring yourself, honoring others. um so what happened with the prayer?
Hmm. Um, that's such a great question, and I think that I will never know what happened to that prayer
Mm.
because I prayed to that water, and afterwards I dumped it on the tree, and I imagined the tree bringing that water down all the way, and there's so much that is done in prayer and in healing that we actually don't get to see,
Yeah.
feel, or know. And that's the hard part about this work that I know that you're doing too, is that we don't always get affirmed that what we're doing is heard, felt, seen, impacted in some way. And sometimes there's just not that affirmation. And that's when we have to, connect to the well within our heart of like, we're doing this for some reason.
We're just the vessel.
Yeah, we're just the vessel, and I've really, that's kind of why I moved up to where I am right now, is because I'm just on a path of like, where is my highest purpose? Like if I'm really like, if I just fully got out of my way and listened, you know, like, where am I meant to be? What am I supposed to do? And it's scary when you listen, because when you get an answer, you're like, shit, now I gotta now I gotta follow that, you know. And I love what you said, something about, like, you know, my parents' approval and stuff like this. And you know, I think beyond, you know, I do really care about my parents' approval, and that's so much of what I've worked through of my life, and like the social pressure to have a job. You know, it's, I don't live a normal life. You know, I didn't just go to school, get the job, get married, and have kids. And not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, it's not my personal path. And so sometimes it's hard to express to my family, like, what I'm doing, and like, it's okay. I'm not like, you know, I'm really loving my life. I'm just not taking the normal trajectory. And in that, you know, there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of joy. And yeah, I think, you know, my lifestyle of living with the earth is really continually trying to deconstruct this social pressure of what we're supposed to be doing with our lives.
Yeah.
Because who is that voice coming from of what we're supposed to do? It's been a message that was passed down a game of telephone that just, I'm like,
Who benefits from that?
Yeah, exactly. And like, who said the first thing? Like, can we recheck what we just, you know, what's been passed down? So yeah.
Like, who benefits from those restrictions and that illusion of safety? Because it really is an illusion. I can tell you, like, okay, so I was doing my own lifestyle until I figured, okay, fine, I'll get the house, I'll have babies, I'll get my. And years go by, and you're like, oh shit, I kind of like the other lifestyle I had before. I love my babies, I love my partner, and this life we've created, but I fell into this trap of, this is safe, right? This is what you're supposed to do. And so when I see younger generations like you just doing it, I mean, even my daughter, who sometimes struggles with this whole thing, I'm like, no. Who benefits from you bogging, you know, yourself down because of, oh, you're not having this regular job and a house and babies? Like you said, if that's your journey, cool. But it's an illusion that that's the best way or that's the safe way. Because you'd be drowning in your own sorrow when you're doing that just to create a sense of safety or to have the approval of society, your parents, whatever. And I think it's beautiful that we get to choose and that you can follow your heart and be out in the land. And then I can see you and I'm like, I need to talk to Nikki because I need her to make me one of those houses in my land that I'm going to get.
Oh yeah, yes.
You know? Yeah.
And it really, like, you know, I have worked through comparison most of my life, and just, you know, I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think it's just a really common thread in all of us, especially with this technological age. You know, we're all just comparing each other to like what we're doing. We want that lifestyle, you know, and I get into that all the time. I'm comparing myself to other people, and you know, I think it betters me in ways, and also it tears me down in ways. And I've had, you know, over the last 5 years of this pretty radical lifestyle, I do get people who reach out to me and they're like, how do you do it? You know, like, your life is so amazing, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's hard to respond sometimes because, you know, the in my bones, there's just so many medicine stories that bring tears, you know, like I feel the tears well up right now as I even just think about it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, you know, like it's definitely not a journey for the faint heart, you know, like it looks beautiful and it is beautiful, and it, you know, there's also some real struggles of trying to um to live in our truth in this life. It's just like sometimes it feels like we're going through the fucking mud.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's supposed to be easy.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
That's another lie.
Totally.
It'll be easy. No.
Yeah, totally.
We're here to work
Yeah.
and play, but you know. Do you want to share a medicine story?
Yeah, I'll share one. There was one night, and this, oh, there's so many actually. Um, okay, I'll say this one first actually. So my plan was to build a tiny house. I bought the doors, the windows, the trailer, all of the things, and I was living out of a camping tent at this point with all of my stuff in bins and whatever, and I actually flew my uncle out to help me build this tiny house. For months I was planning it, and he came out to help me build it. And as soon as he got out there, he was like, this trailer is no good. You got a bad trailer. This guy welded it. He's like, Nikki, you got it. He's like, we can't build on this. And, that's another story. But so while I was gathering all the pieces and planning the tiny house, I was in my camping tent, and I had gone for a trip somewhere, and I had gotten back to my little abode. And the winters in Valley Center get cold. A lot of people, it's Southern California and it's in the valley. So at night, it's freezing, and, there's kind of flash flood vibes out there when it rains sometimes. And one night I got home, and it was like it was traveling, flying, all this stuff. And I get home and I'm just so ready to just lay in my bed. And I unzip my tent, and there's just standing water in my tent, and all my stuff is floating. Everything that I have is floating in this water. And I was like, oh my gosh, and it's dark. So I get my flashlight out, and then I go outside, and my bins of clothes, and the tarp had blown off the bins while I was gone. And all my bins of clothes it was just soaking in water. It's just like everything was wet that I owned, and it was middle of winter. There's not much sun. It was freaking cold. And and I had to spend the night sleeping in my car. And I think I had like a towel in my car that I wrapped around. There's like so many moments like this that I've had in my life, just like, what are you doing, Nikki? And it was so profound for me because it was such a journey of letting go of all material things. And this was like within the first couple of months of my experience here. So it was such an initiation of like, thinking that it's just easy peasy to move back to the land. And Spirit's like, nah, girl, you're attached to your belongings. Like, look how much stuff you have, and it really started this journey of like, what does all this material stuff mean? Why are we gathering all this stuff? Why do we lug it from place to place? It's like, my mom is such an inspiration. She also has a lot of clothes and all this stuff, but she also has the same sweater that she wore for her 8th grade photos. And her like height, she still has this stuff where I'm just like, I really had to look at myself. And it wasn't until all my shit got stirred up and soaked that I, everything molded, and it was just wild. But it really pushed me to get rid of all my stuff and just reevaluate my attachment to material stuff or a relationship.
Right.
And I think that's the journey of what I'm cultivating right now as Earth is healing. It's our relationship to the earth that we're healing, our relationship to self and the relationship to earth, that it's our relationship to everything that we have to look at.
Yeah, like, why do we need 7 pairs of tennis shoes? Because we're not connecting to ourselves and to earth. So there's this void, and we're thinking that this is how it goes. Meanwhile, we're just creating more plastic and stuff to be maybe not able to be recycled. And yeah, it's a bigger issue than we think. It's not.
Yeah, and filling that void, I love how you said that, because there's another night, and it was just a glimpse of moment that I remember, but it was the full moon, and I came outside of my tent. And at this point I bought a bigger tent, made a platform for myself so I wouldn't relive the same experience. But, I came outside, and there were so many nights just looking up at the stars, crying, really, but in pure joy. Like, it was all really beautiful things, but challenging. And I remember just feeling myself touch the voids within me. And it was like, there's one thing of like acknowledging the fear that comes up and being like, okay, I hear you, fear, I see you, I'm loving you, right? But like, no, we gotta freaking touch the fear. You have to sit in a dark room with that fear and just touch it and love on it, and when you touch the places of void that you've been like filling with food or shopping or whatever it is, like I still go through filling these voids, we unconsciously do it, but when you sit in that void, it's the emptiest, darkest space in your body, and also the most liberating, freeing space where you get to feel we're just consciousness.
Yeah.
It's like, and if we can see the polarity of the emptiness, the scary darkness, and also see the liberation in that, it's the work doesn't have to be so heavy.
Yeah. It's like
And
this
it's
nothingness.
the
And you sit in
nothingness
that.
and everything at the same time.
That's such a goal. I'm like, yes. I mean, that's. I mean, I think if I understand what you're saying, I've had those moments when it's like you touch that void, you're befriending the fear, the mystery, the uncertainty, but also feeling the joy, and then it's like a breath of this space of. And it's not even that you feel like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. It's just like, oh, this is what it is. Like it's not. Hey, sorry, a little pause there because we always have guests, dogs barking, or the kids next door, or whatever. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. That's where it's at. It's not that complicated. I mean, it is, but it's
Yeah, and I think sometimes I'm just kind of sit in for the moment, like if I was listening to this podcast, and sometimes, when I hear things, I'm just like, oh, how do I touch that void? Like when I hear people talk about things, I'm like, how do I bring this into my life?
mhm,
And I think one thing that I just want to share is like the void is always shifting and changing. Just because we touch the void and heal the void doesn't mean that it goes away. I really believe that anything that we're trying to get rid of in our body, if we're trying to get rid of the fear, rid of the scarcity thought, whatever it is, that baby's gonna come back tenfold. Like it's about integrating the void. It's about integrating the fear.
right.
And just because we touch the void or integrate the void, like there's always going to be a new void, and I feel that as I move to a new house, I'm like, ooh, I don't have my friends, I don't have my routine, I don't have these certain comforts, so I'm eating more, and then I become aware of like a new void within me, and then there's part like, shit, now I got to go inside this void. However, the fact of going through these experiences of touching the void, it's like there's an empowering piece of knowing that there's another side, and when we even there's like tiny little moments of celebration that we've gone through a hard time. Screen just froze.
Yeah, you froze a little bit. We're back. We're back, everybody. Are you back?
Okay, we're
Okay.
back. So yeah. So um yeah, touching this void, and it's always changing, and right now feeling a new void, and there's this empowerment sense, when you go through something challenging, it resiliency to me is really
Understand.
just um the the resources or embodiment to navigate challenge
Yeah.
is resilient to
Yeah.
me, because we're forced to be like, what tools do I have to get through this? And we've all been through hard moments, whether, small or big. We've all gotten through a hump that's like, whoo, that was gnarly, and the next one that comes up, if we can just tap back into that moment of celebration. And I really encourage and invite everyone, when you have little moments of celebration, to like breathe with that for just a minute and like let your whole body feel that. Because when you let your whole body feel that and drop an anchor right there,
Mm.
like that anchor point is where you can come back to, right? So like when these new voids come up, I remember that anchor that I dropped 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, shit, I went through a similar void, and it was, the other side was so good, and it's empowering, and I continue to want to go through these
Yeah.
spaces within myself to grow.
Yeah. Embracing the whole human experience, right? Not just
Yeah, because we're coming back
this,
to
not
whole,
for, yes.
right? Like, isn't that
Yeah.
what we're doing? It's coming back to wholeness and like living in this wholesome world, and yeah, if we want to come back to wholeness, we have to gather all the fragmented pieces of our soul and put the puzzle together
Yeah.
and make it
The,
whole.
and having a
Mhm.
lot of compassion for ourselves, sometimes, man, it's hard, but you're just bringing out that compassion. That's one of my biggest tools. Self compassion, bring it on.
Yeah, the word compassion is my biggest. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The word compassion is same for me, dude, is one of my biggest mantras. It's just anything that comes up, and mantras is like, if you would ask me 6 years ago, I'd been like, yeah, that fluff, okay. But as I explore mantra, it's like just saying the word compassion over and over in my head when something's hard, when I'm, listening to someone that it's just hard to listen to or be in that conversation. I'm still present. I'm just like compassion, compassion. And if we can repeat that word, that vibration starts to embody within us, whether we can feel it or not, it energetically does a thing in our body. And the word compassion is just so profound. And we have to be able to offer ourselves compassion and other, like it has to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's too hard. I mean, as hard as it is, but yeah, compassion is beautiful. The most beautiful gift we can give to ourselves and others. Mm. So I'm just going to tell everyone we're cutting off here now because she is still up in the mountains, right, Nikki?
Yeah.
Okay, so where are you living at now? You're in this
Yeah.
140-acre place.
Dude, I just cannot make this is one of those stories in my life that I mean, it's so fresh right now, so I'm still basking in it, but it was such a deep leap of faith. I saw a post on Instagram of this tiny house, and I follow a bunch of tiny house things because I'm into natural building and all this stuff. And so I clicked it and I was like, ooh, I love the layout. I saved it and I read the caption. And I was like, oh, this lady is looking for someone to be a land caretaker. So I called this lady up, and beautiful woman, and her and I just really jived on the phone and connected. And moments later, I'm like, I think I'm going to drive up and check it out, and I was so happy where I was at the retreat center doing natural building. I was like really in an environment where I could explore natural building more and do more projects. And yeah, I went and checked it out. Long story short, it was a full hell yes in my body. Outdoor bathtub, outdoor shower, that pretty much sold me.
Yeah.
And so, this property is 140 acres. It's an old herbal school and just a brilliant woman. And I think one thing that I noticed as soon as I landed there was a prayer that I was really asking for of guidance was just an elder in my life, like
Mm.
just an elder in my life to show me whatever and teach me whatever would be of my highest service right now, and just leave that open. And the land and the home and everything fit all the pieces, and I'm just realizing, like, if we really ask for what we want, we have to be able to listen to the call, and really, like, if we
Ashe.
ask for it, if it lands in front of us tomorrow, can we say yes? Would we say yes?
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that it just
Oh,
plopped right in front of me, and
amazing.
I was like, and I was talking with the someone I was living with at that time, and I was like, dude, I don't know why I'm going. There's no rationality. I don't have a lot of money saved up. I don't have a job up there. I know nobody within 10 hours. It's like nothing logistic leads me here. And in that realization that no rational explanation was my fuck yes, because everything in this world is so like logistical, rational, analyzed. And it's like the other side of that is like our dharma, our purpose, And so, yeah, so I live in this tiny little house out in the woods, completely off grid. I can't even use my Instapot without turning on the generator. So it's, it's constantly, I love it too. And that's what I love about like living off grid, or these alternate ways of living, is it really challenges how often we keep the lights on. How many light bulbs do we have in our house? It's like the flushing toilets, how much water
Yeah.
are we wasting, and like being on my moon cycle, being able to bleed on the earth, like these things that feel so primal,
Mhm.
and sometimes like animalistic. Like sometimes I look at my life and I'm like, whoa, people would think that you are an animal, Nikki, and also I'm like, isn't that what we're doing? Like coming back to our animalness, like animalistic wildness.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, those moments that I feel wild, it's such a teetering line of feeling crazy, that's my wild, that what society has categorized as, am I going crazy or am I just rewilding myself? You know,
Yeah.
and the answer is rewilding ourselves.
Rewilding, returning,
Yeah, yeah,
remembering.
remembering. Yeah, so big. So, yeah, I guess I'm really just right now in my life, I'm really on a quest of living these alternative ways and coming back. My life symbol, whatever, is a pendulum. I swing from one side to the other,
Hmm.
and I've lived kind of the radical alternative life for some time now. And not that I'm, that will be my life, I feel like, for a long time, but it's coming back to that center of like, how do I implement this into a modern society? It's the same with my Ayurvedic studies. Eastern medicine, I'm not native to where I'm learning medicine, healing modalities, So I'm a white privileged woman in the United States learning Eastern medicine and bringing it forth through my body as I can integrate it, from what I know and what's around me. And I think that's the same with all my experiences of like alternative living, is like, how can I bring this back to modern society, or like to community? Because if I'm always just out in the woods off grid by myself, which is, to be honest, really easy for me,
Hmm.
where's the impact?
Yeah.
And I'm realizing more and more, like remembering that like I'm here to live these experiences to bring them back,
And
and
teach us. Yeah.
and integrate them. And I didn't think I was ready to be out in the wild again so deeply, but I'm so humbled to have this experience, to be able to listen to nature and bring it back to my friends, community, and family of what I learned. And I'm still learning how to do that, like how to communicate what I learned. It's the same as like someone asks you like, oh, what have you learned in your life? It's like, how
Ooh.
much time do you have?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's just remembering and learning how to, you know, receive my life as my offering,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and see like, I don't need to grasp or learn anything outside of myself. It's just living life and then sharing my life.
Yeah. So I've seen that you're like talking about sharing your life and making an impact. Um, tell us some of your offerings, because I know I've seen. I think you're going to be like a speaker in some type of big workshop or festival. I'm not sure. Can you tell us about that, and where can our listeners find you to keep?
Yeah, totally. So the one that's coming up is Origins Gathering, which is in Northern California, which is an epic all women's gathering, primitive skills, ancestral skills, like so great. And you know, my journey right now of my offering has been exploring, mm, opening containers to talk about things that I've been reading and exploring within myself. And a lot of that has been like communication stuff, listening, all of these little bits, and just opening up a container where I don't necessarily facilitate the space, but it's just like, hey, I've been exploring listening to others and myself for the past how long. I would love to share what I know so far, any tools that I picked up, and then like hear from everyone else. And so right now, you know, especially living out in the woods, a lot of it's via Zoom and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's creating containers to talk about how we just perceive life, you know, and realizing our bodies are the vessel, you know. And one, the workshop that I'm facilitating that I believe that you just saw, is the title is Sensory Doors of Perception. And a big
Nice.
thing in the area is connecting to our five senses, six senses really. And that's how we see and perceive the world. You know, what comes through our ears and what comes through our eyes, we take that in and perceive the world. And like, how profound if we can actually dial in and look at, you know, what do our ears and our sense of hearing, like break that down for a minute, you know, like how often throughout the day are you listening to something? How often throughout, like how long throughout a day are you in silence? And just really breaking down these sensory inputs, like that feel so second nature, you know, to touch a soft pillow and feel comfort. It's like, what's happening when we touch something, you know, like what's happening when we hear something, like, and how can we hear something and be so radically moved by what we hear that it completely shifts our entire life? You know, there's lessons and messages all around us that are just waiting for us to actually receive them, take them in with our senses, and consciously follow that path of like, wow, this touch is moving me, you know, and explore that movement that comes from that. So yeah, that, I mean,
That's beautiful.
yeah, it's constantly evolving. I would say most of my work is just like earth-based through an Ayurvedic lens, you know, of Eastern medicine. And yeah, creating intimacy with the earth. You know, earth intimacy facilitation for me is reconnecting, like building relationship with the earth, creating intimacy with the earth. Like how, which I think for a lot of people, even the word intimacy, sometimes, you know, I think people can be like, ooh, like I don't want to talk about sex. You know, it's like, no, intimacy
Why
is
not?
like sharing a really like profound moment together. And like just asking, you know, for everyone, like for myself and for you and the listeners, of just like, how intimate can you be with your surroundings? Even if it is, you know, even if you're out in nature or inside your home, it's just like, how intimate can we be? You know, and in that intimacy is really listening and feeling, and it cultivates a sense of presence.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
That's so profound. You know, we can be in a room with someone, but if we're both doing our own thing and not really cultivating intimacy, we're just kind of in this room with someone, right? And
Yeah.
the same situation, if we're in this room with someone, but we start having conversations and sit with them and listen to them and share with them and be witnessed, intimacy is cultivated, and both of us leave the experience profoundly changed. And I think that's so big with earth intimacy, is it's not just about our evolution, you know, like I sit with the earth and with nature, and I'm changed and moved, and also the earth is changed and moved from me sitting with the earth. You know, like I really do feel like the trees, when we sit with a tree, like that tree is like, oh, they see me, you know,
Yeah.
like,
They respond. Mhm.
yeah, like the earth is the same as our family, you know, like our
Yeah.
parents, our sisters, our brothers, it's all the same. Mhm.
Well, we're all made of the same substance. Right? And she's holding us here on this big, beautiful planet. We're flying in the middle of who knows where at a huge, tremendous speed. Where the hell are we going? Pay attention. We got to pay attention, right? Grab onto her, connect, kiss her, bless her.
Yeah.
With this awareness that you talk about, it's so cool because it's, some people might say, well, of course I hear, of course I listen, but are you with an awareness of really paying attention and then really seeing how that sinks in? I love that you said that, sensory doors of perception.
Mhm.
That's that's the
Yeah.
jam right there.
Yeah, and
We're not
I love
gonna
what
have
you just
this.
said too, is like, like, yeah, listen, like, yeah, I'm moved by this, but can we follow that thread of being moved by something? Like if you look at a tree and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's like we can leave that tree being like, wow, I'm so moved by this experience. But even deeper, I got a lot of Scorpio in my chart. I'm like, let's go deeper.
Yeah.
What's underneath that being so moved? Like where in our body do we feel movement? What inside of us was moved? Like really sitting with ourself, and I think that is the practice of sitting with nature and the earth is just an opportunity to sit with ourselves. Earth is my greatest teacher. Like I said, like the plants and soil is the education that I never had, the teachers that I never had in school. And earth is, when I want to learn something, I just go sit outside, and it seems silly. And sometimes I feel like I'm literally just throwing sticks around on the ground and looking at the sun. And other times I'm throwing sticks around and I'm like, oh, that is why life is that, and it's, life isn't always good and life isn't always bad. And we're not always like receiving epic downloads and all these things. And we're not always in dry spouts of like, where are we going? It's always shifting and changing. And there has to be patience, it's to be here when it's good and be here when it's bad.
Stay.
Yeah.
Stay with yourself.
Stay.
Please stay.
Stay. Yeah.
And the earth is so faithful. I feel it like outside of my backyard I have like this big block where I grow a bunch of food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting because no matter what I throw in there, it grows. I need to move stuff around and take care of it and move stuff from the compost, but I'm always like, wow, it grows and it grows and it grows. And on the other side of my patio, we poured out some cement. I kind of regret it now. I wish it was all dirt, but even through that concrete, there's little holes and there's plants coming up. Like she's not giving up. Earth keeps going, keeps giving. If we tend to it, if we touch it, if we listen, and sometimes my younger kid, they make fun of me like, oh, you and the human condition and this and that. I'm like, no, you don't understand how magical this is. And they'll come out and they'll say, isn't that a trip? Like from one seed we planted, there's like 50 peppers. And it's still going and going and going and going. And open the pepper, and then there's all these other 50 seeds in there. It is tremendous, the amount of abundance. I'm just like, it's like a worship of her, like a gratitude and honoring. And so for that work that you're doing, it's like, oh, thank you, Nikki. Bless you, Nikki. Keep on keeping on because it's beautiful.
Thank you, sister. One quote that I'd love to share, I did my permaculture design certification last year, and my teacher, Lucian, which, and maybe you want to put this in your notes too, but aboutandforsustainability.com is the Steer brother and sisters offering for permaculture wisdom, like so beautiful. They just moved to Missouri, so they have courses and stuff there. And in my training, he said something that was so profound for me, and it's just in my bones now. He said, the earth is a source and a sink, right? Like earth provides us everything that we need. And it also takes, like we flush everything down the toilet, down the sink, right? It's a source and a sink. We as humans are also a source and a sink, right? We are a source of life. We are a source of information, of wisdom. And we are a sink, right? We eat stuff and, we flush out our own waste. Yeah. And so if we can just realize like the earth is a source and a sink and we are a source and a sink, like we're the same in that. And like just constantly humbling ourselves of just, what the earth provides and what the earth takes for us to be a source and a sink and to have this experience, and I'm really cultivating a new awareness of my word choices, especially with everything crazy happening in the world today. At times I've heard people be like, what's wrong with this planet? Or, whatever it is. And I just want to anchor really quick that nothing's wrong with the planet. It's the greed of the humans. It's the human desire that has gone astray. Like the earth, this world, this planet is what's holding us down and keeping, like that is really providing us everything we need. It's the human desire, it's the human ignorance that has really left us astray, and yeah, how can we every single day just like cultivate an honoring and reverence for what this earth really provides us,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. By working into that void. And what are you
Mm-hmm.
trying to fill it with? That's not gonna, like really looking into that is
Mm-hmm.
what I would recommend.
Totally.
Wow, let's with that sixth sense.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah, to think more than just right now, but long term. And what are we doing? So yeah, I'm definitely gonna
Mhm.
write all of that stuff on here on the link, the sustainability and the origins gatherings and your Instagram, and everybody follow Nikki and reach out to her. No, really, thank you. I want to come visit you. Um,
Yes, so much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing and for hopping on here and for what you're doing. Honestly, thank you for sharing your experience and what you're doing because I think it's important for us to be able to see and to touch that
Mm.
and to hear the rawness and the difficulty of it and the beauty and the joy. To know that there's different ways of creating a life,
Mm.
right?
Totally.
Mhm.
Thank you for creating the space truly, because yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't even know how long we've been talking, over an hour. It's, there's so many stories within this lifestyle that not everyone wants to hear, and there's not always space created to share.
Mm.
And so it's also, as I feel like I have more and more to share as I go through my life, it's like I'm also realizing everyone else has more and more to share as they evolve in their life.
Yeah.
So I'm so moved and inspired by your work of just creating these spaces for people to share, and sharing it with the world. Like, I think we all know podcasting is not for the money. No one really does it for the money. It's
No,
like,
no.
it's a pure, yeah, it's just like a pure, whatever your draw is to do it. But this is it. We have to create spaces for each other to share and to be heard, and like, how reciprocal when we can be in this place.
Yeah, telling our stories is um, it's so healing, right? It's like um, there's one of those things. I think like in the old medicine woman, if you would go and say, oh, I don't feel good, I'm depressed, or something's happening, when there was 4 questions, and I don't think I remember all 4 questions, but of course one of them is, when did you last dance? When did you stop dancing? When did you stop singing? And one of them is, when did you stop sitting back listening to stories? So listening to stories is one of the things that heal us. And this is a Recovering Your Life podcast. It's a healing place. So, yeah, there's information and links and how do I do this and that, but it's really about space for stories and for connection.
Totally.
So thank
Yeah. And really quickly, because I know we're wrapping up here.
you. Wow, it's good.
There's a book called Narrative Medicine
Okay.
that I just love because, I'm just finishing up my Ayurvedic practitioner program and all this stuff. And of course, I'm looking at research, numbers, lab, all the things. And really, for me, it's just been like the narrative is the medicine of the stories, and this talks about indigenous cultures sharing stories of their life, and that was the medicine, like that was the doctor, was the stories,
Yeah.
and really just wanting to cultivate that in my life of like learning from the stories and then sharing my stories for others to learn from, and not going to what the research papers say all the time, because that stuff is funded and skewed to be a certain way, and it's hard, when the heart speaks and shares a story there, that's truth to me. And you know, I feel this in you too, and I feel like this is why we got along so well. Is just we're truth seekers, you know, and I feel both of us are very outspoken humans who are not afraid to say what we want to say, and, you know, swear if we want to swear, and stand up and yell, and, you know, do the thing. And like it, life takes courage. Like
Yeah.
we have to be able to stand up, you know. And for me, it's like connecting with you. I remember that night so distinctly when we just like dropped in for hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, following the thread of like our connection, you know. And I think we've only seen each other in person a few times, but it's like there's so much similarity in the courage that we both are cultivating in our lives.
Mm.
That's like, follow that. You know, when someone's in your life and you hear something that resonates, you feel something in your body that resonates, reach out, tell them that they're empowering you, tell them that you want to learn from them, ask them, you know, like connect,
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah.
It's all there in the connection. It really is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm like
Mhm.
getting goosebumps and shit. This is so cool. It's just, this is like the juiciness of life, right? Saying these things and just knowing that they work. They're
This is
part of,
it.
that's it. This is the medicina, right?
It
Right?
is. It
Mm.
is. Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, thanks everyone for joining. I'm sure we'll hear Nikki back here again soon. Please share this with your friends, people that are not your friends, everybody. Um, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining again on Tales of Recovery.